Hello listeners, and welcome to Let's Chat, one of many an episode where we have a guest speaker sharing their amazing journey towards a better way of being through a teaching, a practice, or from a passion of helping others through mainstream or complementary healing practices. Today we will be chatting with Stephen Altair, author and teacher of Light Body Awakening, including mindfulness and meditation. Stephen has been writing and teaching meditation techniques for over 30 years. Stephen has co-founded 3 educational institutions and a health and lifestyle television channel. He has published 10 books, including a bestseller, and composed 3 music albums, including a single which he has presented to Nelson Mandela on his inauguration. Stephen shares teachings, activations and transmissions from the light of awareness at the heart and light body awakening based on subtle energy meditation. Other courses that Stephen offers include Astrology for Awakening and Dream Yourself into Awakening, both which sound amazing and a true journey to be taken on. And there is an awesome offering on one of Stephen's websites of a free 30-day challenge to awaken into presence, which is an offering of 3-minute awake awareness challenges every day. Stephen is also involved with the Raising Our Vibration community with the intention of assisting us to move into and elevate our inner state to a collective consciousness. Well, listeners, I am truly keen to hear more all about this, so let's join the conversation here. Let's chat with Stephen Altair. Excellent. Hi, Stephen, and welcome to the Better Way of Being podcast. It's lovely to have you join us here.
Thank you, Sharon, and love and blessings to everybody that's listening, because I mean, it's a joy already. We've been discussing lots of things prior to this beginning, and so I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity. So thank you to you, and thank you to all the many people that might be listening, and the love and the compassion and the understanding that we can bring to this world at this particular time, right? Because there's a lot of, as we were mentioning, there's a lot of anxiety and concern about many different areas of, health, well-being, the environment, the spiritual well-being of our children, of ourselves. So I think all of that's very present in this conversation we're about to have.
Yes, absolutely. And let's see where it takes us. And listeners, everything that we will be chatting about, like the way to get in contact with you, I will be putting in the description part of this podcast. So just sit back, listen, and see where we go.
Oh, exciting. I'm excited, and I hope everybody listening is excited. I've done a lot of interviews for TV, radio, all kinds of formats, and I think the wonder of it is always the mystery of it, right? That there's a sacredness and a wonder about any connection like this with you, Sharon, and it's not only us, right? We're connecting with everybody that's listening, so there's a real sacredness in that interconnectedness and relating. Yes. So I love that.
Yes, and Stephen, I don't know about you, but I always find that don't plan, because it's going to go exactly where it needs to go. Conversation does, doesn't
it? That's exactly my forte, is the unplanned adventure of life.
Yes. Yeah, so I do have a script, and listeners would know that, but we'll see where it goes.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
And before we do actually move into talking about everything that you do and your practices, I would really like to take you back to where it all started. I can remember reading a short little extract about you, where you said that you dreamed as a young lad. You dreamed of being a monk, and that in itself led you to a huge awakening in self-awareness and all spiritual paths. Was there a moment, a defined moment, that all this, what's led you to be doing what you're doing now?
Right. Yes. Well, I think it actually began before I was born, because in my previous life, I died in 1959 as a monk in the service of the Dalai Lama, actually in a monastery in Tibet, and I had this recall right through my early years. So when I was born, my caregiver was a Mother Superior, or Reverend Mother Kathleen Adamson in the Carmelite order. So I was brought up right from that very tender 0 age of being, doing the centering prayer and knowing that I was surrounded by angels and that God's love was awake in my heart, and that I love Saint Teresa of Lisieux and Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint John of the Cross. I was a real mystical kid, a lover of mystical kids. In fact, I nearly decided I was going to marry my next door neighbor, whose name was also Therese, purely because her name was Therese. Yeah. I thought, this is a good thing. This is how you identify the people you want to connect with. They're called either Therese or Teresa. So there was this, magic that happened to me when I was very little, and she gave the Reverend Mother gave me, lots of beautiful support about how I was a child of the Virgin Mary. So as a little kid, I didn't believe anything else. I thought everybody must be the child of the Virgin Mary. Yep. And so it was a little bit of a surprise, Sharon, when I was just 2, and I had this recurring dream every single night that I was a Tibetan monk walking with a companion into a Buddhist monastery, or Tibetan Buddhist monastery, which turned out to be Samye monastery in Tibet. And I died every night. Every night I fell off into this primordial sound and this vast luminous light. And I experienced it every single night, and of course woke up screaming, and my parents thought I had epilepsy. So they took me to many doctors. My early life was spent as a subject of neuroscience. So even now I still do, I'm doing lots of neuroscience research, and I'm the subject of a lot of neuroscience research because my brain, like Kevin's, Kevin Shaninger, who you've also interviewed, is very unusual. And so I've had tests done that have been published that show, when they've compared my brain against the average meditator, that something really unusual is going on. They compared it to looking like a DMT or a God molecule, which is kind of funny. So when I had all these tests done, right from the age of 2 to 3, because this happened every single night. Every single night, I was a Tibetan Buddhist monk in exactly the same spot on exactly the same place, and then something happened and I died, and I experienced the same sound and light, which I can still remember today, and is actually a very living, very real experience for me. So thankfully, to a doctor whose name I also remember, Aaron, when I was 3, after 365 days, there's certainly something you're wondering, like, is this ever going to stop? Because I would go to sleep at night, exactly the same thing would happen. So this has been part of the reason why I was in a lot of TV interviews and radio and newspaper, because of this, because it was a little bit of an unusual experience. And that experience, she actually said, oh, look, he's just overheated. Why don't you, because at first they did lots of brain tests, thought I was an epileptic. And of course, there wasn't anything wrong with my brain. And she just said, look, take all his clothes off, leave him naked on the bed, and just take all the blankets, just try that. And of course, the moment she said that, and the moment they did that, everything stopped. And it made me really curious, because I had this living memory so I can remember everything, the vivid, and I was totally lucid. I was clear that I was having a dream, but I couldn't wake up out of it. So I developed that lucid dreaming ability at a very young age, and catalogued about 20,000 dreams over the next about 20 years or so, because I was, I was dreaming in some cases dozens of dreams a night, very clearly.
Yes.
So that led me to explore a lot of things, just purely on this spontaneous adventure, like you said you love so much. Just purely opening to, spontaneity and synchronicity, like where does life lead me if I actually allow it to flow through me and have the experience that it's supposed to be having. Yeah. So at the age of 4, I asked Mum to find me a Japanese teacher, because I really wanted to learn, tea ceremony, Zen, all those sort of things. I don't know why, but I didn't know anything about Japanese culture. I just said, I want to learn Japanese. I want to learn Japanese culture. I want to learn all the things that are associated with Japan. She said, why? I said, I don't know. I just got this feeling. And the same thing happened at age 5. I wrote to NASA because I got this feeling that I should be on the first one-way flight out of the solar system to Alpha Centauri, and I was going to be on it. And I was sure that because I was 5, I was pretty sure that they must be running trips and that somehow I'd get on them. And they did write back. They were so lovely. They said, look, we're not quite ready to run those one-way trips because it's so many it's however many light years away, but we'd love you to come and be an astronaut when you're 18. So there was this lovely exploration of life that led me to wanting to be so I wanted to be a priest then at 6, and I did all the celebrant stuff and held church and mass for my family and friends, all that sort of thing. And then at age 13, I remember going to my neighbor one day. She was an alchemist and a very good alchemist, even though I didn't know that at the time. And it was lucky. I lived next to her. On the left-hand side of my house lived next to her, an alchemist. In the next house were 2 Sai Baba devotees, 2 sisters who had vibhuti and all sorts of miracles coming out of statues in their houses. You call that
lucky? Oh, that was meant to be.
It was definitely meant to be. And then on the other side, I had a magician, a very talented music. And then just around the corner, I had actually, without me knowing, a world famous astrologer who saw. So I had all these,
you had your
openings.
Network.
Had the network all sorted out. There was a good reason for me being in the right place at the right time. So my next door neighbor said to me, because I went across in tears, and I said, look, there's magic everywhere. And I said, I want to know how to access, and I don't know why I'm here, but I think you're the person. And she said, oh, I've been waiting for you to come and see me. And she handed me 2 books, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, and the Kabbalion, which is by the 3 Initiates, a beautiful book on alchemy. And I read those avidly, and then went on from there and studied wonderful paths studied Yogananda's path for many years, the alchemical path, and then healing, like yourself, did Reiki. So I did a Tibetan Japanese form of Reiki called Reiki Jinkaido with Dr. Ranga Premaratna, who's an Australian, a wonderful, wonderful soul, wonderful being who holds the lineage of that particular practice, and went on to study astrology, both Vedic and Tibetan and Western, and went on to study. Of course, I'd been doing meditation for many, many years. So I studied under Yogananda, and then under his 2 communities, both Self-Realization Fellowship and Ananda Community, and then studied with the Dalai Lama. So I met him when I was quite young. I was running a company in my early 20s, and I said to the directors, let's sponsor the Dalai Lama. I don't know why, but I got to do it. Well, I didn't know why. So, and in sponsoring him, that was his very first trip to New Zealand in those days, I got to meet with him personally and have a private audience, and he gave me some beautiful advice. And since then I stayed in touch, and I've spoken to him a number of times over the years, and that led me to study with a lot of famous lamas, including Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche and Mingyur Rinpoche, and just really great beings over the time. So I went and studied in Christian communities. I studied in Hindu communities, and Krishna communities, and Buddhist communities. I studied in the top of the Himalayas, spent time in Tibetan monasteries, traveled all over the world, went to Rabindranath Tagore's school and taught there. I taught on Yogananda's school, on Krishnamurti's school. I taught on Sri Aurobindo's school. Also, I taught on the Steiner schools and Montessori schools. So I've sort of had a lot of explorative moments, just purely from allowing the world to unfold with all its beautiful blessings, like a prayer, right? Because really our life can literally be like a prayer when we allow it.
Yes. And as we were saying earlier, you had that support around you at such a young age. You could have definitely gone down that medical mainstream, there's something wrong, lock you up. But no, the unfolding, the dream state is so untapped into.
Totally.
I have those types of powerful dreams as well, where it's you're locked in a dream, witnessing a dream, and then you make yourself come out of it, or you have to do a bit of interplay to unlock it or change it or whatever. Depends on what's happening when you're in it. Sometimes, of course, like you would have been as a young kid, experiencing that same dream cycle, waking up exhausted.
Exactly.
I've had those dreams where, and I'm in the military, or I'm a Secret Service or something like that, and I get shot, and I wake up feeling
Yeah, you actually feel like you put your head, you go, oh.
Yes, you know where you've been shot, and for the rest of the day you're carrying the wounds of that memory.
Totally.
Yes.
It shows how potent the real power of both subconscious, conscious, and superconscious. And a little bit like we were talking in the beginning about the koshas and the power of the different bodies, the different energetic bodies, and the fact that we do have subtle energy bodies, and we do have sheaths that connecting right to the steep spiritual core, where we can open up to subtle etheric bodies and really connect that the physical, astral, and causal bodies are real, can have a interplay once we understand how to work with them. It's such a potent power that can come into our life when we really we're really open to it.
Yes. And also the past life memories, or as much as you can, the interplay of perhaps the more draining parts of past lives, but you can also draw upon the goodness, the wisdom or the knowledge that you attained in a past life. You can bring it through to help you in this life.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah.
I really love that. I had that conversation with my daughter yesterday. We were driving the car to grandma's, and my daughter's 7, right? And she contemplates a long while, and then I asked her once, what do you want to be? And she said, I want to be a Buddha. Her name for it actually is Babu. When she was just 1 year old, we took her to one of the local temples to do a fire ritual or goma as a kind of a welcome to the world, because we were living in Japan. So I've lived in Japan for some years, lived in Australia for 10 years, lived all over the world, lots of different places. But currently I'm in Japan, and there was a television crew there. And the woman came up. We were the only foreign people there because it was a beautiful temple, but quite out. We live right by a Zen temple that was built in 774 AD, and it's old. And it used to house monks and nuns here, and it's quite famous because it's got a particular statue that's revered for its miraculous properties that are housed there. And so the interviewer went up to my daughter and said, "Oh, does she know who Buddha is?" And she was only 1. And we still got the videotape. It's really cute. And we said, yeah, she knows who Buddha is. So the woman pointed to because there was a statue of Buddha in the temple. And so she pointed to the Buddha kind of with all this was being filled, and said to Maya, can you point out Buddha? And Maya looks at the statue, looks at the woman, looks back at the statue, the woman. Then she leans over, I was holding, leans over and taps her on the heart and goes, Babu, Babu here, Babu, Babu. It was just so cute. It was just so beautiful, really. And the woman was in tears because, of course, she realized that Mo was saying, yeah, it's not a statue.
You're not tricking me on that one.
No, exactly. It was so cute. So just going back to, the past life information is that my daughter was on her way to grandma's with me in the back of the car, and she suddenly said, Dada, I just don't get it about all this learning stuff. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, school and stuff and learning, I just don't understand it all. They just don't really understand learning. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you know how there's the born before world? That's what she calls the past life. Yeah, I said, I know how there's the born before world. And she said, I've been in the born before world. I can remember it. And I said, oh, okay, well, you'd have to tell me about it. And she said, yeah, but the learning, right? We do all this learning in the born before world. How come there's so few people that remember it? She said, you remember it. And I can remember a little bit, but she said, most people don't remember their born before world. And I was thinking, wow, that's really cool wisdom, right? Yes. Coming from a 7-year-old. And what she remembered when she was very young, she wanted to be a flower seller. And so she remembered her one memory from the born before world is she remembers picking these beautiful flowers on a world that wasn't Earth with my wife, with her mom. And that's why she had this, we wondered, why do you want to be a flower seller? She said, oh, because I was a flower seller in the born before world, or not a flower seller, a flower distributor.
Association, yeah.
The association. So it's magic,
Yes.
She was just magic. I was really touched by her sort of understanding of that connection between the wisdom that we have prior. Because, you know, even if you look at simple quantum consciousness, the fact that energy can't be can never be destroyed, right? It goes through this transformational cycle. If you consider that, then there is a direct relationship between all the consciousness that's ever been and our ability to access it. And we can access it, you know, and when you're talking about the subtle energy body, we can access it through the subtle energy body. If we tend to think that we're just operating in this physical, then we'll tend to just access physical information. But if we understand the other layers, the other energetic layers or sheaths of the body, we'll start to realize that we can access different information through all the different layers of the body. And it makes sense, you know, in terms of quantum physics. I'm a particular fan of a well-known quantum physicist by the name of Dr. Joachim Kepler, who's currently the head of consciousness research in Germany. And he actually spoke about the direct relationship between our intentions and our thought and the 0 point field, or the field of boundless infinite awareness and consciousness. And the fact that when we have, for example, high gamma synchrony in our brains, so our brains are wired actually for oneness, because when you think about it, they're wired for communicating across different parts of the brain. That the gamma synchrony allows the neurons to actually fire and send information that's going to talk to wholeness and oneness in a unitary experience. So we're literally wired to do that, but depending on which kind of, if we're in fear, so that, you know, speaking to the pandemic and so on, if we tend to live in fear because of something that's happening, then we'll actually access a particular part of our brain that arouses fight or flight. And it's going to go into survival mode, and we're not going to access that oneness. And you can even see that in the world, right? All these countries with all these different weird laws about citizens can do this and they can't do that. In Japan, you know, we've got 120 million people, right? And currently there are, in the whole country, there are 120 cases. And in Tokyo, with 14 million people, so I live on the outskirts of it, there were 21 cases yesterday. Now, this is partly because I think, like, there are no law. If you get vaccinated, you get vaccinated. If you don't, you don't. There's only, currently in Japan, 75% have been vaccinated as of yesterday. That means 25% of 120 million is quite a big potential to have a lot of cases, right? Yes. But there's 120 in the whole country. And that is simply because this level of courtesy and kindness, and also wearing masks and just maintaining an appropriate degree of courtesy and care, means that, you know, the government would never legislate saying mandated this and you can't do your job unless you've, I mean, all of that sort of thing is like, clearly, if the statistics were right, then Japan should, with 75% and not mandating any of this, it should be somehow having a huge number of cases. But I talk to my friends in Australia or New Zealand or in the States or in Europe, you know, and you look at the cases rising, so you think, hang on a second, these stats don't add up. The governments are not acting in oneness. They clearly aren't. They're acting in all, they're acting from that, you know, fight, flight, fear mentality. Yeah. And guess what? That lowers the immune system. It doesn't bolster it.
That's exactly right. We're talking about this consciousness, that we are a being of, but we are living in a physical body which has, we've had to adapt into the physical body with the nervous system, all the chemicals that are produced, the hormones that are produced, and the fear element is creating what it's supposed to within the physical body is all the adrenaline and all that stuff that is counterproductive to the immune system.
Right.
So yeah, step into that positive way of living in the oneness of everything. It's gone. You know, we've got we've taken back and given the physical form the endorphins and the way and the strength and the ability to heal itself.
Exactly. 100% agree with you. And, you know, I'm really, at this moment, I'm pretty happy to be living in Japan, because Japan as a whole is showing, look, that's possible. I have not heard one word of criticism from any friend. They have, if you're vaccinated, it's great. If you're not vaccinated, it's great. Everything's cool, and nobody's putting any pressure on anybody. The companies said, you know, look, you've got to maintain distance anyway when you come in, and just, if you're vaccinated, that's fine. If you're not vaccinated, be careful. That's cool. Everybody's okay. Let's all look after each other. Let's be kind and careful and compassionate and loving as the number one thing, right?
Yes.
What you do after that, that's your choice.
Yes.
And then maybe it's important that you let us know, but we're certainly not going to discriminate or create any kind of separation or fear amongst people because of that. And we're certainly not going to be paying people to get vaccinated and not paying them to be not vaccinated. And as a good friend of mine in Sydney said, he's such a dear soul, and he actually runs some big conferences. He's a magic man, and he's not vaccinated, and he's, currently he's not allowed to go out because he's not vaccinated, whereas the vaccinated people are allowed to travel. And he's well. So here's the irony, right? He's well, he's not vaccinated, he's making choice, but he's also being discriminated against by people who feel that he's not doing his part for society. Now, if that was true, then, as I say, if you look at Japan, then something should be happening differently here that's not happening. There is not the surge in cases. The surge in cases in Japan happened over the Olympics. So I'm just totally into love and kindness and equanimity and compassion and joy. That is where the immune system thrives. Those basically, metta, loving kindness, and karuna or compassion, or mudita or intrinsic joy, and the power of upekkha or equanimity. Like, if you really actually made those the entry points of your day, I think the first moment we get up in our day and the last moment when we go to sleep are so crucial. So if you really made that the beginning moment of your day when you wake up, and it's an awe-inspiring, fresh and wonderfully brand new day, and you're going to bring this gorgeous quality of loving kindness to every single being, no matter what. And then something different would start to happen. You would naturally be allowed to make a choice about what you do, and you do it with full information, and you do it with wisdom, and you do it with understanding, and there would be just a whole different way of sharing and communicating, and especially at the top. So for our leaders, they would be acting from that. Love and compassion certainly does not separate in the way that it's been doing around the world. No. Love and compassion is really inclusive. It's about oneness. It's about really actually allowing all of us to feel that we're truly that one united human family in kindness, and that includes everybody. Yes. And that, so it's just interesting what I've seen at the moment, and I'm just really, my heart sings out to all those souls on all parts of this pandemic, to actually really speak to the beautiful love and kindness that we can bring to every single person in our. And by the way, I always get, when I'm talking to somebody wonderfully inspired and angelic like yourself, I get different things that come into my presence. And there was a beautiful flash of light indicating an angelic presence here. So we're well supported. And that angelic presence is saying the same as what you and I are saying, is that let's look after our immune system. Let's give our thoughts to real love and kindness and care for all of humanity, and really reach out to people. So if there's somebody that you've been feeling a little bit disconnected with, here's a good time to bring awareness to that disconnection. Actually see if, even if you do it at a distance, see if you can bring love and kindness and compassion to that.
And to think, when you step into that awareness, or you come into conscious awareness, that you all of a sudden you feel like you're on that conveyor belt of fear. And let's talk about your subtle energy meditation, because that could be something like a tool that we can share through what you share with listeners now, as to how to step back into that mindfulness, how to take a step out of being in that hurricane that's surrounding the earth, if you like, to come back to the bliss center, to take back the control or the power of self, to then embrace the kindness, the power of it, the gentleness, the love, the compassion, the gratefulness. So let's talk about your meditation practices.
Sure.
Let's just drop into your many meditation practices. But what would be there's a beginning. There's a beginning to every step we take. So if for listeners don't practice on a regular basis, or are perhaps keen on beginning to step more into a mindfulness or more kindness practice, what would you recommend?
Currently a little drop of water. So first of all, subtle energy awareness practice. So, and I know you practice this as well. So especially listen for viewers. So when Kevin and I met, we found such a similarity between our practices, and we really wanted to develop this subtle energy meditation because we could really see into the heart of how important this would be to shift your baseline state of consciousness from these states of anxiety and stress and self-focus to a really peaceful state of this compassionate, spacious awareness. So one of the things that we really encourage people to consider is that this particular practice might actually become your baseline, so it becomes a stable background state. So the first thing, if you were to consider your practice at the moment, normally when we go through life, we consider that how we see things and how we experience things is exactly as they are. So first of all is to consider that whatever you're experiencing right now is actually a specific perspective based on your current state of awareness or consciousness. So you can think of this like, when you're in love, you're really in love, the whole world seems to sing, right? And when you're not in love, and say, for example, you go through a breakup, then life can seem pretty dour. So you can use those as an example to say, yeah, okay, I can see my perspective really actually determines what I experience, how I feel, and how I relate. And what we tend to do in the beginning is we tend to see everything as being an objective experience, like, okay, we experience it through our senses, right? So right now, if you're listening to me, and particularly if you're watching this, if you don't look at your computer or your device, but feel into the space around the computer, feel into the space around your room, feel into this opportunity to consider the vastness of being itself. Like, it's a bit like looking at the night sky. We look up at the night sky and we see all those amazing stars and we think, wow, that's amazing. But we're actually only seeing about 1% of the entire cosmos or less, right? And it's a little bit like that with our perspective. We tend to have an experience like I mentioned, like a relationship breakdown or a health problem or a financial issue. And we tend to see that as being exactly what's happened. Like our whole experience is judged through that lens. So it shapes us. And instead of us opening to this incredible opportunity for awareness to be present to the immensity of the cosmos. So if you just let your awareness rest for a moment on the space around you, you're aware that there's even space in your room, right? And when you project that awareness past your walls in your room, consider that you're now connecting to the space around your house and around your room and out into the sky, and then consider the awareness that goes beyond the boundaries of our earth, right, and out into the cosmos itself. So you're aware even now. You've been told about it. You might not have directly experienced it, but you're aware now. As your awareness goes out, you can hear sounds beyond your room. You can hear sounds out. So there is an extent to which our senses actually then determine what we feel in the experience. But as I know, that out beyond the boundaries of Earth, there is a space, and that there is a galaxy that goes on, and then there are an infinite number of galaxies. So you start to become aware of this vastness of your awareness. So the first part is to become really deeply aware of this vast awareness that is present, that is not tied into your senses, but can actually potentially go beyond them. And then you start to look at, okay, how do I get to know this? And one of the simplest skills that we teach is interoception, which is your ability to tune into the inner sensations of your body. So if you now, from that vast awareness that is infinite, if you turn inwards now and just sense inside yourself and become aware of the sensations in your body right at this moment. So as you turn inside and you turn into the inner sensations of your body, you start to become aware of the, say, aches and pains. Maybe your breathing's a little bit ragged, maybe your body's a little bit jarred, maybe your knees hurt, or you've got a shoulder ache. So try bringing awareness to those body parts, those tensions, those sensations without any judgment. See if you can embrace them. See if you can allow and embrace them like a long lost friend, right? Because the body's such a sacred vehicle as a bridge into the many sheaths or layers of subtle energy, or the many subtle energy bodies. So this being able to embrace these physical tensions is a really important part of it. So as you're doing this with me now, you just start to become aware of these physical sensations, and you start to become aware that every sensation can be experienced like the cosmos itself. There's a oneness, right? At some point you've experienced the shoulder sensations, at some point you experience the knee problem, but then you start to go beyond it and say, oh, I can use this interoception to feel the space inside me. I can also use this interoception to feel the space around me. Like I'm not actually separate from everything. I've perceived it perhaps, but now I'm starting to become aware through interoception that I can be fully present with whatever it is, even an ache or a pain or a tension or a fear. I can also tune into and access intuitive information and higher states of consciousness. So you might, I know many of you out there who are very intuitive, can receive messages, can channel information, or open to an entire universe within you. And it's this precious type of opportunity that interoception really does, and it's often neglected. And so we start to open to the fact that, oh, we're not just these physical sensations, because you can also bring your awareness to the breath as you can do right now. And you can be aware of the breath all the way on the inhale till you pause, and all the way on the exhale until you pause. And then you can be aware, oh, I have this relationship with the breath too. And there's a sense of which you can bring your awareness to the breath, and you can learn something about the quality of the breath. If your breathing is a little ragged or not quite even, then try doing this. Try breathing in, long inhalation, maybe 6 counts, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then long exhalation. Maybe make it even longer exhalation to a count of 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you start to actually tune into the power of the parasympathetic nervous system. This long exhalation allows you breathing in again. You're really tuning into the power of simply this, by turning your awareness to the breath and observing how the breath is behaving, and developing a sense of welcoming and friendliness and love towards the breath itself. And by creating this long exhalation, you can actually do different things with your body. So I'm sure you're starting to feel now that you're coming right down, and you come to drop into the next important skill, which is mindfulness. Because what you're starting to do now is you're paying attention on purpose in this present moment, without any judgment whatsoever, like a curious observer to your breath. So you're becoming aware. So watch the way you learn something about the breath, the way that you inhale and there's a pause and there's a gap. There's a silence, right? Just for a moment. And then you exhale. It's beautifulness. I couldn't say it any better. The quality of beauty in the breath. So, if there was a way to enter the beginning of subtle energy meditation, I'd describe it much like that it's about understanding perception, understanding the power of interoception, turning inwards, and then developing mindfulness of the beautifulness of the breath. Yes. You're right there. You were there all the time from when you were born.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, and that space in between the breath is also such a power center.
Correct.
And I like talking about the nothingness. When people sometimes practicing and starting meditation or new ways of doing things, there's a comment, but I feel nothing. To me, that's a very powerful place to be. From
very
nothing,
powerful.
Wow, nothingness is the thing we need. Well, we should be trying to achieve in aspects. that nothingness is such a foundation for everything.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. You know, Mingyur Rinpoche described nothingness or emptiness as the vast potential of infinite possibility.
Yes.
I just thought it was such a beautiful description, because it's saying that nothingness, when the brain stops, right, it suddenly stops all its chatter, so its narrative content ceases, and that nothingness is actually the infinite potential to simply be. I absolutely agree with you.
Yes, and to accept that nothingness as, you're there, breathe into that nothingness, practice getting into that nothingness a bit more often. You don't have to have that busyness around us to still be able to achieve so much.
I totally agree. You know, I was in a lecture with a Harvard professor and he was talking about all the different languages. And at the end of it was a weekend seminar. At the end of it, I stood up and I said, actually, there's only one language you haven't got there. And I said, that's the language of silence, stillness, spaciousness, the language of nothingness, of emptiness. And he paused, right? I still remember, we kept in touch for some years because he really loved it. And he said, you're right. He said, most of the research is done on things and busyness and objects, languages, the way the language works, the way the metaphor, the this, the that. But he said, there's very little research to that space in between the words. And he said, there's a whole thesis there on cultural silence, for example, how relevant it is to different, cultural nothingness. What does that truly mean for Indigenous people, for example? So I'm Maori Hawaiian by birth, and I've spent a lot of time with my own people and with the Indigenous people of Australia and the Indigenous people of America, and been on lots of different walkabouts, songlines, powwows, all those wonderful celebrations. And that, the power of the space and the silence and the nothingness is really revered. It's the opportunity to access and have portals through to other realms.
Yes.
Literally.
Exactly. And what an experience when you can tap into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. When you can tell, you reminded me of just a very quick story that my wife and I experienced about tapping into it. So we were, because a lot of people think, mystical realms, but they don't really exist. There's just this physical reality. But we were in a tour group in Fox Glacier in New Zealand some years ago, and we reached I'd been there many times, but my wife's from Japan. It was her first experience there. And we came to a bend in the track, and there was a little track going off to the right. And I said to the tour group leader, I said, I've been here quite a number of times. I've never noticed this track. And he said, yeah, okay, we'll go on. We'll meet you in a minute. So I took my wife out. We just went off. Nobody else came with us, just the two of us. And we got to what looked like a sheer, impassable group of trees. But when we pushed through, we came out the other side in this most extraordinary. Now, this is Fox Glacier, which has just a glacier and a whole lot of dirt, right? And some low shrub. It does not have a beautiful place with lots of waterfalls and amazing butterflies flying around and all these twinkling rainbow colored, it was just, Sharon, it was incredible. Fortunately, I have my wife to bear this tale with me, because she saw it. She is convinced to this day that I'd either hypnotized her or I'd put her in some sort of time and space shuttle and transported her, because she said to this, we had cameras, phones, nothing worked. Nothing. There was no, the power, there was no power. Yes. So we just we stayed there and we, frolic, laughed, played in the water, played in the beautiful space. I mean, I've never seen anything like it to this day on this planet. And at the end of, I reckon it would have been 20 minutes. My wife reckons 30, but even at a casual count, I would have said it would have been at least 20 minutes, because we were having a time of our lives there. We didn't want to leave. And then I said, look, we better go back. They'll have either reached the glacier and gone up. So we come out, and I carried a little rock and I put it at the entrance to the thing so I could find it, so I could show the people. And they were literally, I thought, what are they doing? They're just, few 10, 20 meters away. I said, hey, and they said, oh, great. How, are you guys okay? And we said, yeah, but we thought you'd worry about us. We were gone for like 20 or 30 minutes. And then he said, no, you've only been gone a matter of 30 seconds. And we looked at our watch, and sure enough, it was exactly the same time. It hadn't shifted in time. And they, they said, oh, we just thought, it was like young love or something like that.
Yep.
But there you go. It was like, and to this day, it was just one of those fabulous experiences in life where that time and space altered, and there was a different dimension we passed through, and we both experienced it. And and we went back, we took the group back actually to find the stone. There was no path. So because we left the rock there in the path, yes, and we went up to the group and then said, oh, look, we want you to see it. And they said, we'll look on our return. Because I said, look, see that bend there? So we went back to the bend, no path, nothing, wow, not even the rock. So it was that was very interesting.
For you. Isn't it awesome when you get an opportunity to go off path? I mean,
totally. Totally.
Many moons ago, I used to get so frustrated at getting lost whenever I travelled anywhere. But that's well and truly in the past now. I love getting lost because generally you find something that you just wouldn't if you stayed on path. No,
totally. I totally agree with you. Totally. If you stay on the path too long, you find the path, right?
Or you get shipped, or you get kicked off and put onto a new one.
I absolutely agree. It's magic. That is truly
and life's magic when we are like what you do, open to the full consciousness or bounty opportunities that are out there.
Totally. Yes. I totally agree. Yes. Totally. Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. Wondrous.
So now, I mentioned in the intro, because I've been researching a bit on your website, and I'm really keen to get listeners searching you out and having a look at what you offer. I mentioned you have a 30-day challenge,
yes,
of awakening into presence.
Yeah.
Yes. Could you share with listeners a bit about that and how to access it?
Sure. So if you go to altairlove.com, it's very easy to find, altairlove.com, and you will find when you go to the website, you can click on a series of meditations called Awaken to Presence. Now, what these are, they more or less take you through a very simple process of waking up. It's called 30-Day Challenge to Awaken. It actually literally means to awaken. You wake up to doing these practices every morning. And I've had so many testimonies from people who've said that it's just sort of blown their reality because they've woken up into a different space and time and realization every single morning. So it begins with the body. So it's really simple. It gets you into the body first, then a bit like what I did with you before, gets you into the body sensations, and then into the breath. And then it starts to help you to awaken to vision. So you stay in awareness while you look at objects, and then you stay in awareness while you hear things, and then you awaken to awareness through your feelings, and then you let thoughts come and you're still aware. So one of the key things is just developing the sense of awareness. So when a thought comes, you're instantly aware when the thought. So if I ask you now, for example, to be aware of a simple interaction you had today with a friend or with a child or a pet or somebody you love, or so positive interaction, you can tend to bring that thought up. You can let it abide for a period of time. You can let it dissolve. So it's simply becoming aware of those thought processes and the way that going back to your talk about nothingness, the way it appears from this emptiness or nothingness or spaciousness, and the way that it stays for a while, but also the way it vanishes. So you start to look at the origin of your thinking and the dissolution of your thinking, and then you go through into an awareness of space and presence and I am consciousness and silence, stillness, recognition, awakening to this unborn, uncreated being. So this changeless spaciousness that's always present, or this changeless nothingness or changeless emptiness, or this changeless infiniteness that's always present in and from this space of tranquility and serenity that you spoke about before. And then awakening to open-heartedness, awakening to doing this for everybody. The fact that if you dedicate your practice every morning, there's just this wonderful opportunity to bless and be blessed by devoting your practices every single moment. Anything that happens, you devote it for the benefits of all other people. And then devotion, devotion to your own path and to the messengers on your path. And these can include the teachers, the spiritual guardians, the guides, the mentors, the beings on other realms who are assisting you, the star beings that assist you, and also those beings that you might struggle with. They're also assisting you because they're actually helping you recognize certain things and obstacles and tensions on your path. And then awakening to love and surrender and opening to the radiance of your own true being. And then this really deep sense of intimacy and intimacy with everybody. So you can awaken to intimacy with yourself and a significant other, but also to a sense of intimacy in all your reactions and actions and interactions with people. And I often see when you're going about your day, when I go to the supermarket, I see everybody in the supermarket as a Buddha or a Christ or a Magdalene or a Divine Mother. And I see the floors I'm walking on as mandalas. So they literally light up, and I see everything in the floor or everything in the supermarket as being these precious sacred objects. So it's a different way of seeing and feeling that, to see everybody as a Buddha or a Christ, and all your environment as a temple or a sacred mandala, and every breath you take becomes a sacred breath. So it's that sense. So that's the process. And then awakening to the whole body as life, deep sacred listening, receiving with gratitude, forgiveness, practicing forgiveness, which actually breaks the timeline. You know, when you think about it, if you hold something against, say you've had a problem with your dad and you're holding this grudge against him, then that actually informs your future, right? Because your future and your interactions with people are potentially already taking that grudge and using it and actually having that form around your consciousness. Now, when you go back and you forgive your father, for no matter what it is, when you really deeply forgive, it breaks that bond, right? It breaks whatever the tension is around it, and it creates a new future. You're suddenly awake to a whole new self, and you're actually walking a path which is a whole new future self. So
Yes.
all of that kind of process.
Wonderful. I will put the contact details in description, as I said earlier, for people to go and have a look, access that challenge, the 30-day awakening into presence, and so encourage people to get in and give it a go, to tap into the oneness and the magic of life, and tapping into what you said about how it can, when you the forgiveness, for an example, when you heal that within yourself, the lineage, even before and after you.
Before and after, generations before and generations. Yeah, you literally do break that.
Yeah, why not?
Totally.
Give that gift to every line of us.
Well, you know, it's incredible, Sharon, because I work with different scientists as well on this. So I'm working with meditating groups, and I'm working with different scientists and researchers. And the scientists that are working on these synchronistic patterns describe exactly the same thing, that if you consider the quantum field, and that until you bring awareness to something, then the photons literally are not going to connect, right? There's not going to be a reaction or interaction without there being awareness of it. So if you're not aware of something, potentially it doesn't exist. And the same thing happens, as you said, when you become aware that your interaction with the past affects the entire past, because you're actually changing your relationship with your dad, and the example that I get, and that allows him potentially to free his relationship with the past. And that then you start to understand, oh, that literally, in terms of quantum physics, you are literally changing the way the neurons fire in people's brains, the way that the photons are interacting across the cosmos itself, and like that butterfly effect or the ripple effect, you literally can have that effect. It actually is a real effect, and it's so dynamic and so extraordinary that
multi-dimensional layers of layers of layers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. It is awesome. It is awesome. Yeah. I know we're speaking exactly the same language. You could have just as easily pretended to be me and talked to my stead, and it would have made just as much sense, and I would have been just as happy.
It has been fabulous, Stephen, having this chat, and I'm sure listeners are just really keen to know more. I'll give them the contact details. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, this program, and all that you do.
It's an incredible honor.
With your work that you're doing, your actions, your actions to bring everything into awakened consciousness. I mean, you can affect the people in your world, but you're affecting the earth grid. The earth grid can, when its levels of consciousness are awakened and also given an oomph from all of us,
it affects the interstellar, exactly, affects the interstellar grids and so on. Do you know, just on that note, so if people do want to find me, they can also go obviously to Kevin, my site, raisingourvibration.net. And also there's another site, the Conscious Accelerator and the Wisdom Path. So they can find the Wisdom Path on the altairlove.com. Yes. And we're actually working with researchers and scientists to make conscious teams and conscious groups and conscious communities a reality. So we're doing this in a venture with Venture Crowd Australia. So this is actually a large group of Australian entrepreneurs, investors, and scientists and researchers and meditators that are part of this shift towards real conscious connection. So bringing into, pausing first of all and saying, let's get aware, and then bringing awareness in through various modalities, and then connecting. And exactly as you were talking about, connecting not just right across the earth grid, but considering that when the earth grid actually is alive with synchrony and coherence and love and wisdom, it actually connects with the universal grid, right? It connects with the cosmic grid. It's no wonder we don't have I've had direct contact, as I know many listeners have, and there's no wonder why not, because if they're going to come and look at the way that we're even dealing with something like a pandemic in such isolation, such disorientation, then they're going to simply wait until we get into, it's much more important that the earth grows into coherence and interconnectedness with the environment. We're not separate from our environment. People say coal's the culprit. No, we're the culprit. We're the one who's digging the coal. Come on, let's get the phrasing right. It's got nothing to do. It's us, right? And it's the same with the synchrony and coherence and unity and consciousness on this planet. People don't seem to realize if we get this planet into consciousness, which is everybody's job or everybody's responsibility, then we're going to actually come into coherence with the entire cosmos. Yes. All the connections that many of us already know that are present, they will become apparent. They'll be right here already. It would happen in the click of a finger, because you'd create. It's just like the brain's firing. When the tests they've done on me, they show these in very high gamma states. Then you think of that on the planet Earth. We're all awake. The whole Earth is firing in synchrony and happiness and joy. Think what that does to our solar system, to the planets, to the alignment and energy in the entire universe. It's just so clear and obvious, but it'll be so wondrous to people. They say, why didn't we think of that before? Well, of course, many of us, like you, me, and many of our listeners, we're already thinking that way. We're already thinking, no, okay, it's not about going back to normal after the pandemic. The pandemic is waking us up to the incredible opportunity to retreat, to come into consciousness and awareness, to awaken to raising our vibration. There's such a unique opportunity to be alive and awake right now.
And there's no mistake about it. It's time.
It's time
to awaken to a better way of being for everybody. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, thank you so much. I do look forward to seeing where you go next, and I wish you well with all the adventures that you're having, whether it's off a path that only you get to see. Share it with us.
Sure. Well, do you know, it's funny, just before this, I was in a talk with a good friend of mine from Heart Mind Alchemy that we run, Holly Erin Copeland. We were talking about the mystical brain, the sacred heart. So there you go. I think all human beings, we've got access to this. Yes. So let's find out. Let's share and open to the incredibly miraculous opportunities in this precious human lifetime. Yes. So it's really awaiting every one of us. Every single person who's listening is living a miraculous, precious lifetime.
Yes. Well spoken. That's a wonderful way of putting it. Yeah. Thank you so much again.
All right.
Blessings to
much
you.
Love. Yes. Much love and blessings. And what an incredible opportunity this is, really, to sit in this serenity and tranquility with you and talk about such beautiful things. So thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.